You've probably heard of Frank Abagnale, the guy Leonardo DiCaprio played in Catch Me If You Can, the teenager who faked being a pilot, a doctor, and a lawyer without knowing a thing about any of them. But what if I told you that Abagnale was just an amateur? Today, you're going to hear the true story of a man who didn't just fake a profession. He faked having absolute limitless power. He convinced prime ministers, Middle Eastern royalty, and the biggest banks on Wall Street to hand him the keys to the vault. He stole an estimated $4.5 billion, lived like a modern-day Jay Gatsby, and threw parties so insane they make the Wolf of Wall Street look like a kid's birthday. And the craziest part? He actually funded the movie The Wolf of Wall Street with stolen money. This is the story of Jho Low, and this is the greatest heist of the 21st century. Jho Low's story starts in Penang, Malaysia. His family wasn't poor. His father, Larry Low, had made a tidy $15 million by skimming money off corporate mergers before getting caught and pushed out of his firm. Larry wanted his son to reach the absolute top of the global elite, so he sent him to Harrow, an ultra-exclusive boarding school in the UK that educated people like Winston Churchill and the Rothschilds. But when Jho arrived at Harrow, he had a brutal realization. In Malaysia, his family was rich. At Harrow, surrounded by the sons of Middle Eastern sultans and European billionaires, he was a nobody. So, Jho developed a superpower. He became the ultimate social chameleon. He started telling everyone he was a Malaysian prince. To back up his lie, he convinced his dad to call in a favor with a billionaire friend. While the billionaire was out of town, Jho invited his wealthy classmates to his massive estate and luxury yacht. Before they arrived, Jho swapped out all the photos of the actual owner's family with photos of his own. The teenage royals bought it completely. Jho was suddenly part of the inner circle. He took this exact same fake it till you make it blueprint to the Wharton School of Business in the US. He rented fleets of luxury cars, threw tens of thousands of dollars on credit at casinos, and hosted massive VIP parties, desperately paying off the debt months later. He realized something very quickly. Rich people don't background check you if you're picking up the tab. But Jho didn't just want to drink with the elite. He wanted their money. By shadowing his wealthy Middle Eastern friends, he realized that true unimaginable wealth was sitting in sovereign wealth funds. Billions of dollars of oil money looking for a place to be invested. Jho set his sights on the United Arab Emirates. He managed to meet Yusuf Al Otaiba, a highly connected advisor to the UAE's royal family. Jho pitched himself not as a college kid, but as a massive power player in Asia, claiming he could broker multi-billion-dollar deals between the Middle East and Malaysia. The UAE investors were interested, but they wanted proof. So, Jho flew back to Malaysia. He walked into the offices of Khazanah, Malaysia's sovereign wealth fund, and claimed he was the unofficial representative for the UAE royals. He was playing both sides. He was nobody. But he acted so confident and dropped so many powerful names that both countries believed he was the key to the other. Jho secured a massive $500 million investment deal between the two nations. It was a massive success, but as the unofficial middleman, Jho didn't get a commission. He wasn't about to let that happen again. He realized he needed absolute political protection. So he targeted Najib Razak, the man destined to become the next Prime Minister of Malaysia. Jho offered Razak a deal. I will bring billions of foreign dollars into Malaysia. You take all the public credit and become a national hero. In exchange, you let me handle the money. Razak agreed. When he became Prime Minister, they created a brand new sovereign wealth fund called 1MDBB, and Jho Low was handed the keys. His first major scam involved a joint venture with a Saudi oil company called PetroSaudi. One MDB invested $1 billion into the project. But Jho Low and his Saudi contacts didn't put the money into oil fields. Instead, Jho seamlessly diverted $700 million into a shell company he secretly controlled called Goodstar Limited. Just like that, Jho Low had hundreds of millions of dollars in liquid cash. But how do you hide a $700 million hole in a national fund? You buy off the accountants. Jho and his team created fake assets, inflated the value of drilling equipment on paper, and completely blinded the auditors. But Jho was burning through the cash so fast that the fund needed a bailout. And this is where Wall Street stepped in. Jho approached Goldman Sachs to issue billions of dollars in bonds for one MDB. Goldman Sachs didn't ask too many questions about where the money was going. Why? Because they were making roughly $200 million in fees just for organizing the deals. With Goldman Sachs backing him, Jho Low looted another $1.5 billion. By the end of his run, Jho Low had siphoned over $4.5 billion out of the Malaysian economy. Now, if you stole $4.5 billion, you'd probably lay low, right? Maybe invest quietly. Disappear. Not Jho Low. He threw parties that Hollywood still whispers about. For his birthday, he rented a massive private hangar in Las Vegas, guarded by armed security. It was half nightclub, half circus. Cirque du Soleil acrobats performed above the crowd. He hired 20 little people dressed as Oompa Loompas to serve drinks. The guest list included Leonardo DiCaprio, Kanye West, Kim Kardashian, Bradley Cooper, and Robert De Niro. Psy performed Gangnam Style, followed by Busta Rhymes, Pharrell, and Chris Brown. At the end of the night, Britney Spears jumped out of a massive cake. That one party cost him millions. He once dropped 2 million euros in a single night in Saint-Tropez just to win a champagne buying contest, ordering so much Cristal that the club physically ran out. For New Year's Eve, he flew his celebrity friends, including Jamie Foxx and DiCaprio, to Australia on a private jumbo jet to ring in the new year. Then they instantly got back on the plane and flew to Las Vegas, crossing the international date line so they could celebrate New Year's Eve a second time. He bought a stake in EMI Music. He started Red Granite Pictures, funding Hollywood hits. He bought mansions in Beverly Hills, penthouses in New York, and hoarded $350 million worth of priceless art in tax-free storage in Geneva. He gifted millions of dollars in diamonds to the Malaysian Prime Minister's wife to keep the political protection strong. He thought he was invincible, but you can't throw the loudest party on earth without waking up the neighbors. The collapse didn't start with the FBI or Interpol. It started with an angry employee. Xavier Justo, a director at PetroSaudi, felt he was underpaid when he left the company. As an insurance policy, he had secretly downloaded 140 gigabytes of data from the company's servers, nearly 500,000 emails, and financial documents that outlined Jho Low's massive fraud. Justo tried to blackmail his former bosses, but they told him to go to hell. So he sold the data to an investigative journalist. In 2015, the story broke. The Wall Street Journal got their hands on the leaks and published a devastating expose. The illusion shattered overnight. Jho Low's accounts across the US, Switzerland, and Singapore were frozen. The Hollywood celebrities who happily drank his champagne suddenly pretended they didn't know him. The US Department of Justice launched the largest kleptocracy investigation in American history. In Malaysia, the scandal sparked massive protests. Prime Minister Najib Razak was voted out of office, arrested, and sentenced to prison. The bankers and fixers who helped Jho were indicted, but the mastermind? Jho Low vanished. Today, the Malaysian taxpayers are still paying off the billions of dollars of debt left behind by one MDB. Meanwhile, Jho Low remains an international fugitive. Intelligence agencies believe he is hiding out in China or Thailand, living off the hundreds of millions of dollars he successfully stashed away before the walls closed in. With that much money, he might never face a judge. Jho Low figured out a terrifying truth about the modern world. If you steal enough money and you hand out enough of it to the right politicians, bankers, the world will happily look the other way.